Welcome to this explainer. Okay, so what happens when a country's debt becomes so mathematically impossible to pay off that they are forced to literally sell their sovereignty? Today, we're diving into a scenario that honestly sounds like straight up science fiction, but when you really break down the global economics of the 21st century, it suddenly feels a whole lot more tangible.
So think about this. What if Greece actually sold off its historic islands to Silicon Valley tech corporations just to completely wipe out its national debt? We are basically imagining the birth of corporate sovereign feudalism here. Now, if this were to happen, Greece would instantly become completely debt-free. But, as we'll see, this kind of transaction would fundamentally redefine what it actually means to be a nation-state in the modern world.
Section 1, the ultimate bailout. We're looking at national debt versus tech wealth. To really wrap our heads around why a nation would even consider selling off its geography, we just have to look at the sheer math. 350 to 400 billion euros. That is Greece's massive national debt. It's a number so large, it literally dictates the future of unborn generations, acting as this heavy economic shackle that impacts absolutely everything, from infrastructure development right down to basic social services. For any standard government, clearing a burden of this magnitude requires decades of really severe austerity measures and incredibly careful fiscal policy. But if you compare that 400 billion euro burden to the multi-trillion-dollar market caps and the massive cash reserves of Silicon Valley megacorporations, the entire dynamic shifts. It really brilliantly illustrates the contrast here, because for these tech giants, dropping a few billion euros to outright buy a Mediterranean island isn't a geopolitical crisis. It's practically an impulse purchase they could make on a random Tuesday before their morning matcha. The financial power of these modern corporations now completely rivals and often totally exceeds the wealth of historical empires. Moving on to Section 2, Silicon Valley Island shopping. Let's look at this patchwork of corporate enclaves. Greece boasts roughly 6,000 islands, right? Just imagine putting premium chunks of that real estate up for corporate auction. Let's walk through how these hypothetical acquisitions might actually play out. First, imagine Apple snapping up Mykonos. The use case? Turning it into an ultra-luxury, closed-ecosystem smart city. The governance model would essentially be a strict digital panopticon with seamless automated services. Beautifully designed, sure, but entirely controlled. Next up, Alphabet or Google might take roads, using it as a massive physical sandbox for autonomous vehicles, AI municipal routing, and renewable smart grids. The trade-off there is a data-driven technocracy where absolute zero privacy is the default. And finally, Amazon. They could purchase Crete to build these automated deep-water drone logistics hubs, operating under corporate maritime law right alongside fully optimized housing designed specifically for gig workers. Which brings us to Section 3, the terms of service state. We are totally redefining citizenship here. Here's the crucial point. When a mega corporation buys your island, they aren't just acting as your landlord. They are becoming your actual government. To make an investment of this scale worth it, these corporations wouldn't just settle for standard commercial property deeds. No way. They would demand charter sovereignty through something called extraterritoriality. Basically, this means the territory operates entirely under independent corporate bylaws rather than Greek or European Union law. They get complete legal independence from the nation that sold them the land in the first place. Think about how this alters your day-to-day reality. In the old way, you navigate regular Greek bureaucracy, you rely on national police forces, you pay traditional taxes, and you hold national citizenship. But the new way? Imagine trading your civic rights for a terms of service agreement. I mean, we already blindly click agree on our phones, but imagine if your right to live in your home, your basic utilities, and your health insurance were tied directly to a corporate TOS. Instead of paying taxes, you're paying subscription models for road access and emergency services. Police? Replaced by automated corporate drone networks monitoring the streets. And honestly, the most intense part is that breaking the law or violating a policy doesn't just mean a fine anymore. It means getting physically evicted from your country. Let's zoom out a bit for Section 4, a geopolitical nightmare, and look at the global fallout. So, while Greece's balance sheets might look absolutely pristine overnight, Brussels would, well, they'd completely panic. A corporate buyout on this scale triggers an immediate, unprecedented EU constitutional crisis. You would suddenly have a non-state corporate entity operating an independent legal and economic zone directly inside the Eurozone, which completely shatters existing treaties. And beyond Europe, it sets a terrifying global precedent. Think about it. If this is allowed, what exactly stops any struggling nation across the globe from simply selling off its sovereign territory to the highest corporate bidder? And think about the immediate security nightmare for the surrounding region. Adjacent powers like Turkey suddenly wouldn't be negotiating border disputes or maritime laws with Greek diplomats anymore. They'd be facing off against the private, heavily armed mercenary navies and high-tech defense systems of multi-trillion-dollar tech empires. The geopolitical rules of engagement would be totally rewritten overnight by corporate boards instead of diplomats. Finally, Section 5. The price of heritage. What is the cultural cost of all this? Ultimately, we have to look beyond the balance sheets and really evaluate the true, lasting cost of this ultimate financial bailout. As the source material notes, the historic islands, the birthplace of democratic philosophy and classical architecture, would be locked behind corporate paywalls. Greece would be trading its economic shackles for profound cultural displacement. The very islands that gave the world the foundational concepts of democracy would no longer be accessible to the general public. Instead, they'd be restricted solely to corporate employees and ultra-wealthy digital citizens. Which leaves us with this one massive, lingering question. Is a completely debt-free future actually worth trading away a nation's geography, its heritage, and basically its soul? It's a profound thought experiment, and it forces us to really examine the growing power of modern corporations and the fragile nature of sovereignty. What is the true value of a nation's heritage when weighed against the powerful allure of erasing an impossible debt? Think about that tension between our human history and our economic future as you go about your day. Thanks for joining me for this explainer. Keep questioning the systems around you, and I'll see you next time.